A girl with a weak heart and a fragile fate, Sophia Carter, was born with a congenital heart disease, which caused her to always live within limits. The doctor once said that her heart was too weak to withstand strong shocks, and any stress could put her in a dangerous state. This made Sophia's life extremely dull. She could not participate in strenuous activities, could not run, could not enjoy life like everyone else. Her days revolved around trips to the hospital, tests, and prescription pills. Sometimes she wondered if she was really living, or just prolonging her existence meaninglessly. Although Sophia's parents loved her, they were also overprotective. She did not have many friends, no one to confide in. All she had were books and the small world in her room. But her life changed the day she met Blaze. The abandoned dog and the whisper of fate. Sophia had never intended to adopt a dog. She wasn't even sure she had the strength to take care of herself, let alone another life. But fate had its own way of bringing lost souls together. That day, Sophia was on her way home from a routine checkup at the hospital. Her heart was empty, a feeling of despondency rising as the doctor once again reminded her of her own limitations. She passed by the Hope Shelter, a place that specializes in taking in abandoned dogs that were at risk of being put on the list of those who could not be saved. Sophia stopped in her tracks when she heard the shelter staff talking to each other. That dog is about to die. It hasn't eaten anything for a week. She turned her head curiously, her eyes landing on a dark corner of the iron cage. There, a large dog with burnt black fur was lying motionless. The eyes of a dying life. Blaze was unlike the other dogs in the shelter. He didn't bark, he didn't look at anyone, he didn't react to the people around him at all. His fur was falling out in patches. His body was so thin that his ribs were visible. His eyes were empty, no longer the light of life. He was waiting to die. Sophia approached, unconsciously knelt down, and looked at him through the iron bars. She felt her heart tighten, not because of heart disease, but because she saw in his eyes something she was all too familiar with: despair. What happened to him? Sophia asked softly. The rescue worker sighed. We found him in an exhausted state in an empty lot. It seemed like he had been wandering for a long time without anyone helping him. We tried to take care of him, but he seemed to have lost the will to live. Blaze refused to eat, refused to communicate. He had given up. Give up. Sophia understood that feeling better than anyone. She reached out and lightly touched the bars. Her thin hands trembled as she felt the coldness of the cage. At that moment, something strange happened. Blaze, the dog who seemed to have lost all emotion, suddenly looked up and looked straight at her. A sharp gaze, as deep as the night. A pair of eyes that had witnessed too much pain, too much loss. Sophia felt an electric current run through her body. Blaze was not just an abandoned dog. He had a past, something that had made him what he was now. An unexpected choice. The rescuer looked at Sophia, then sighed and shook his head. Do you want to adopt him? But I have to tell you, Blaze might not make it. He's too weak, and if he continues to refuse to eat, he might only have a few more days. That should have made Sophia retreat. Instead, she felt a strong urge. She placed her hand on her chest, where her weak heart was still beating slowly. I want to adopt him. Neither the shelter staff nor Sophia herself believed what she had just said. Are you sure? With your condition, a big dog like Blaze might be too much. Sophia knew she was doing something everyone would object to. But she couldn't turn her back on Blaze. I know he'll die if he stays here. But if he dies, at least he'll die knowing someone loves him. A moment of silence passed. The shelter staff looked at Sophia, then at Blaze. Finally, he sighed and nodded. Okay, but you have to be prepared. Blaze might never recover. Sophia didn't answer. She just looked into Blaze's eyes, and for the first time, she saw a small light flickering in them. Not hope, but a question. Why me? And Sophia wondered the same thing. Why him? But sometimes we don't need a reason to save someone. They were both fragile beings, standing on the edge of life and death. But if they had come this far, at least they could continue on together. Little did they know, this choice would change both of their lives forever. The difficult beginning. Sophia Carter had never felt so anxious. When she held Blaze in her arms, his thin body was almost powerless. His dirty fur was matted to his skin, and his weak breathing seemed like it could stop at any moment. The rescue worker helped Sophia sign the adoption papers, but he repeated his final reminder. I don't want to discourage you, but Blaze is really weak. He doesn't have the strength to fight much longer. If you really want to help him, be prepared. Sophia squeezed her hand lightly. I'm prepared. And she really meant it. But as soon as she stepped out of the rescue camp, reality hit. Blaze was too weak to walk, so Sophia had to use all her strength to help him into the car. But she herself wasn't much stronger. Just a little effort made her heart beat faster. Her breathing became rapid. Still, she couldn't give up. The two left the rescue camp, embarking on a journey whose end no one knew. The room of two lost souls, Sophia took Blaze to her small apartment. It was a cozy but quiet space, too quiet, because she had lived there alone before. She carefully placed Blaze on a soft mattress she had prepared. But the dog didn't react. It remained motionless, its eyes dull and emotionless. Sophia had read many documents about how to care for sick animals. But the reality was completely different. She tried placing a bowl of water next to Blaze. It didn't even glance at it. She tried bringing a small piece of meat close to its mouth. It didn't even bother to sniff it. She had prepared herself mentally, but she didn't expect its condition to be this bad. Her heart sank. Blaze wasn't just physically weak. It had lost its will to live. The fight for life, Sophia didn't know why, but she couldn't accept it. Even though it was a dog, even though they had only met for a few hours, she couldn't let it die. Blaze, listen, Sophia whispered, kneeling down next to it. I don't know what you've been through, but I chose you, and you have to choose to live with me. Blaze didn't respond. Sophia bit her lip, then stood up resolutely. If it didn't eat by itself, she would help it eat. She mixed some porridge with bone broth, put it in a large syringe. Then she gently lifted Blaze's head, slowly pumping a little bit into its mouth. Blaze shivered slightly, but didn't push it away. Sophia breathed a sigh of relief. At least it still had the swallowing reflex. That's right, Blaze. You have to eat, you have to drink, you have to live. And so she repeated this all day, little by little. Blaze didn't bite, he didn't fight back, but he didn't show any signs of wanting to live either. Sophia felt scared. If a dog had lost its will, no matter how hard she tried, it wouldn't recover. Just like her own. Two lives mirrored each other. Sophia looked at Blaze and realized a heartbreaking truth. She thought she was saving him. But in reality, they were both trapped in the same despair. She had also given up hope. She had thought that she would only exist until the day her heart stopped beating. She had lived her whole life wrapped in fear, not daring to challenge anything. Now she had found a reason to fight, but Blaze had not. She grabbed its skinny paw, squeezing it gently. I don't need you to be strong right now. Just don't give up, okay? Please. Blaze couldn't answer. But at that moment, it moved its head slightly. The first milestone of life that night, Sophia fell asleep next to Blaze. She didn't remember how she fell asleep, but when she opened her eyes, it was already dawn. And the first thing she saw was that the bowl of water next to Blaze was half empty. Sophia was stunned. She turned around, and her heart felt like it was about to explode when she saw Blaze looking at her. His eyes were still tired, but not as empty as before. Sophia was speechless. She could only smile, even though her eyes were brimming with tears. Good, Blaze, you're doing great. Blaze couldn't understand what she said, but perhaps it felt it. Life can't be restored in a day. But with just one first step, everything can change. Sophia placed her hand on her chest, feeling the fragile beat of her heart. For the first time in her life, she realized that she was living for someone, not just existing. Blaze and her, they would overcome everything together. No matter how painful the road ahead was. The first sign of life, Sophia still couldn't believe her eyes. Blaze, the dog that had been lying motionless and unresponsive the day before, was now drinking water on his own. Although it was just a small action for Sophia, it was a turning point. You did well, Blaze, she whispered, gently touching its head. This time, Blaze didn't avoid her. It just looked at her, its eyes still tired but seemingly with a glimmer of light. Sophia felt something change in her heart. Perhaps Blaze hadn't completely given up. It was just waiting for a reason to continue living. And she would be the one to help it find that reason. A patient battle helping Blaze recover was not an easy journey. Even though it had drunk water, it still refused to eat. Sophia had to continue feeding it with a syringe, little by little. She tried everything to stimulate him, from bone broth, soft food, even the roast chicken that all dogs love. Blaze still didn't respond. She didn't give up. Every day, she spent time massaging him to keep his muscles from stiffening. She placed a warm blanket next to him so he could feel the warmth of a home. And every night, before going to sleep, she whispered something in Blaze's ear. I don't know what you've been through, but from now on, you don't have to fight alone. She didn't know if he understood, but she believed that those words were touching him somewhere. And then, a week later, the miracle happened. The unexpected moment. Sophia was busy cooking breakfast when she heard a small noise. A clatter sounded behind her. She turned around, and her heart almost burst when she saw Blaze standing up on his own. His legs were still shaking, but he was no longer lying still. He was looking at her, not blankly this time, but with real meaning. Then something even more surprising happened. Blaze slowly walked towards her, step by step. It was slow, it was weak, but it was a sign of revival. Sophia felt a tear roll down her cheek. Good Blaze, you did it. She bent down, gently touching his head. For the first time since coming home to her, Blaze rested his head on her palm. For the first time, he had taken the initiative to touch a human. Sophia knew. He had chosen to live. Strange signs. After Blaze gradually recovered, Sophia began to notice strange things about him. Normally, abandoned dogs are often afraid of strangers, but Blaze has a special reaction to some people. One time, when Sophia was taking him for a walk near a convenience store, a man accidentally approached too quickly. Immediately, Blaze pricked up his ears, his eyes sharper than ever. In just a second, he completely changed. From a weak dog, he became a real warrior. He growled lowly, ready to attack. The man was startled and stepped back. Sophia had never seen Blaze like this. Blaze, what's wrong? Hearing Sophia's voice, Blaze gradually relaxed. But Sophia couldn't help but feel uneasy. What have you been through, Blaze? Apparently, it wasn't just an ordinary stray dog, and she needed to find out the truth. Buried memories. Sophia decided to go back to the rescue camp to ask more about Blaze. She found Adam, who had taken care of Blaze when he was brought here. When Sophia asked about his past, Adam pondered for a few seconds, then pulled her into a secluded corner. I don't know if I should tell you this, but Adam hesitated. Blaze isn't an ordinary dog. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? Adam sighed, then took out his phone, scrolled through something before showing it to her. Sophia was stunned. On the screen was an old newspaper article with a picture of a police officer standing next to a dog that looked exactly like Blaze. The headline of the article read, Blaze the police dog hero in the hunt for a dangerous criminal gang. Sophia's eyes widened, her heart pounding in her chest. No way. Adam nodded. Blaze used to be a police dog, but after an incident he disappeared, and when we found him, he was in a state of exhaustion. Sophia felt her whole body go cold. An incident? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. What incident? Adam was silent for a few seconds, then spoke slowly. His owner, a police officer, was murdered during a crime sting, and Blaze disappeared right after that. Sophia took a deep breath. She looked down at Blaze, who was now lying peacefully at her feet. She had adopted a dog that was a true warrior. But the most important question remained unanswered. Who hurt its owner? And why did Blaze disappear after that? She had a feeling that this story was not over. Unanswered questions. Sophia left the rescue center with a series of confused thoughts. Blaze was not just an ordinary stray dog. He used to be a police dog, participating in crime hunting. But after his owner's death, he disappeared. She looked down at Blaze walking beside her. Why was he in such a miserable state when she found him? What happened after his owner's death? And more importantly, why did it seem like someone was following them? Feeling of being watched in the following days, Sophia began to feel that something was wrong. Even though she couldn't see anyone, there were moments when she was sure someone was watching her. Whenever she walked with Blaze, she always felt an invisible gaze from afar. One time, when she stopped by the supermarket to buy groceries, she noticed a man in a black coat standing near the entrance. He didn't do anything. He just stood there, looking at her and Blaze. When Sophia left, he disappeared too. She tried to reassure herself that it was probably just a coincidence. But that very night, Blaze noticed something. Snarling in the night, Sophia was reading a book in the living room when Blaze suddenly growled. For the first time since he had come here, he had reacted so strongly. Blaze rushed to the window, standing there, his whole body tense like a warrior on guard. Sophia felt her heart pounding. Blaze, did you notice something? She tiptoed to the window, pulling the curtains back just a little to look outside. Across the street, under the dim streetlights, there was a man standing there. He didn't move, didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring at her apartment. Sophia's heart clenched. She quickly pulled the curtains back, backing away from Blaze. Her breathing quickened. She couldn't lie to herself anymore. This couldn't be a coincidence. Someone's watching us. A sign from the past. Sophia decided she couldn't sit still any longer. She needed to find out who Blaze's previous owner was and why he had been murdered. Using the old newspaper article Adam had shown her, she found the name of the police officer who had owned Blaze. Ryan Mitchell, a familiar name. Sophia searched the internet and discovered a forgotten case. 3 years ago, Ryan Mitchell and Blaze were on a mission to capture a dangerous criminal gang called the Black Viper Gang. The gang specialized in smuggling weapons and drugs, and the police tried to raid their hideout. But the raid failed. Ryan Mitchell was shot dead on the spot. The rest of his teammates had no idea what happened to Blaze. And now, 3 years later, it appeared in Sophia's life. She felt a chill run down her spine. This couldn't be a coincidence. Unexpected clues. Sophia decided to turn to the only person who could help her understand better, a former police officer who had participated in the raid that year, Lucas Grant. He had retired after the case, but he had been one of the closest people to Ryan Mitchell. She went to Lucas's house, a secluded bungalow in the suburbs. When Lucas opened the door and saw Blaze, he stopped dead in his tracks. No way. Sophia saw the panic in his eyes. Why is this dog here? I adopted him, Sophia said. I think there's something wrong with his past, and I need to know the truth. Lucas was silent for a long time, his eyes still fixed on Blaze. Finally, he sighed, stepped back, and gestured for Sophia to come inside. If you really want to know, then listen carefully. And then he told a story that made Sophia shiver. The shocking truth. Lucas said that the hunt for the Black Viper Gang was no ordinary case. There was a mole in the police force, a traitor who leaked information, leading Ryan Mitchell's team into a trap. Ryan was killed instantly. The rest of the officers were either badly injured or forced out of the service. But Blaze had seen the traitor. He was the only living witness to the incident. After Ryan died, the Black Viper Gang tried to kill Blaze, but somehow he escaped. And now they knew Blaze was still alive. Sophia felt her blood run cold. You mean I'm in danger? Lucas nodded slowly. If you keep Blaze with you, they won't let you go. Danger is near. Sophia felt fear creep into her every cell. She had thought she was just adopting an abandoned dog. But in reality, she had unwittingly entered a war that would never end. She looked down at Blaze, who lay silently beside her, his eyes sharp but calm. Blaze knew this all along. He knew he was still being chased. He had always protected her, even though she didn't know it. Sophia took a deep breath. What could she do? Abandon Blaze? No. She had chosen to save him. And now she would fight for him. Even if there was darkness ahead, she would not let Blaze face it alone. I will not abandon him, Sophia said, her voice firm. Lucas looked at her, his eyes complicated. Finally, he nodded. Then, you must prepare yourself. This war has only just begun. Prepare for danger. Sophia left Lucas's house with a cold feeling in her heart. She thought she was simply saving a dying dog. But in reality, she had unwittingly stepped into a war that would never end. The Black Viper Gang was more than just a gang of criminals. They were a dangerous organization with connections to powerful underground forces. They had killed Ryan Mitchell, and now they were hunting Blaze. Lucas had said something that she would never forget. They won't let anyone live to be a witness. Blaze was the only living evidence left of the case. And she, the one who had protected him, was now the next target. Sophia knew that she could no longer live as before. She had to prepare for the upcoming attack. The sound in the night 2 days after meeting Lucas, everything seemed normal. But it was just the calm before the storm. That night, Sophia was sitting in the living room, Blaze lying silently beside her. Suddenly, it growled. It started out as a low growl, but it quickly turned into a wary hiss. Sophia felt her heart pounding. She knew Blaze only reacted like that when there was real danger. She slowly walked to the window, pulling the curtains open just a crack. Outside, a black SUV was parked right in front of her house. Inside the car, there were three men. They were doing nothing, just sitting there watching. They were waiting. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. They're coming. Surprise attack. Sophia knew she couldn't stay in the house forever. She needed to do something before things got out of hand. But just as she was about to call Lucas to tell him the news, the back door of her house burst open. Someone had broken in. Blaze immediately jumped up, baring his teeth, letting out a deep, thunderous roar. Sophia froze for a moment. Then, a dark figure rushed in from behind. Before Sophia could react, a rough hand covered her mouth. Be quiet or die. She struggled wildly, but the man was too strong. Blaze charged forward like lightning. Roar. It pounced on the intruder, its sharp teeth digging into his arm. The man screamed in pain, backing away. Sophia took the opportunity, kicked him hard in the leg, and rushed towards the main door. But as soon as she opened the door, a gun barrel was pointed straight at her face. A threat from the past, the man standing before her was a real danger. His face was cold, without any emotion. His eyes were dark, like a predator. Blaze, give it to me. Sophia froze. Why? Her voice trembled. He narrowed his eyes. Because it doesn't deserve to live. Blaze was still fighting the intruder inside the house, but he also realized the danger from outside. He looked at Sophia, then at the gunman. Sophia knew he was calculating something. She had to do something before it was too late. Reckless counterattack. Sophia took a deep breath. Then she looked straight at the man standing in front of her. You know, Blaze was a real warrior. He smirked contemptuously. And what? Then Sophia clenched her fists. You can't be faster than him. At that moment, Blaze shot forward like an arrow. The gunman was startled, but it was too late. Blaze's teeth sank into his wrist. The gun fell to the ground. Sophia didn't miss the opportunity. She picked up the gun and stepped back. Stand still. Blaze still had his teeth firmly stuck in the enemy's hand, refusing to let go. You don't dare shoot. He growled. Sophia clenched her teeth. That's right. She had never held a gun before. But if she didn't do anything, they would kill her and Blaze immediately. She took a deep breath and put her hand on the trigger. Then let's see if I dare. Her eyes were no longer trembling. The enemy stared at her. Finally, he gritted his teeth, signaling the remaining intruder. Let's go. Blaze only let go when the enemy was far away. He was still standing in front of Sophia, his eyes alert. She held him tightly, feeling her heart still pounding in her chest. She knew one thing. This time they wouldn't stop. She had provoked them, and the only thing she could do now was to prepare for the next battle. She leaned down, whispering to Blaze, We won't give up. Blaze licked her hand lightly. He had chosen to stay by her side, and now they would fight to the end. After the storm, Sophia sat with her back against the wall, her breathing still unsteady after the confrontation. Blaze lay right next to her, his eyes still alert, his ears pricked, listening for any movement around him. In all the years of living a peaceful life, she never thought she would fall into a dangerous situation like this. She actually pointed a gun at a murderer. And the scariest thing, she didn't tremble. Perhaps being with Blaze had changed her more than she thought. But she knew they would come back. Next time, they wouldn't make the same mistake. She needed to act before it was too late. Finding Lucas, the last survivor, Sophia knew that the only person who could help her now was Lucas Grant, a former cop and Ryan Mitchell's partner. She quickly packed her things, taking the most important things, and left the apartment with Blaze in the dark. She drove to the suburbs, where Lucas lived in a quiet wooden house in the middle of a small forest. When she knocked on the door, it took a long time for Lucas to open. His eyes became serious as soon as he saw her. They came, didn't they? Sophia nodded slowly. They know Blaze is alive. And now they're after me. Lucas cursed, then opened the door for her. He quickly locked the door, closing the window blinds. Sophia was not surprised to see a loaded pistol on Lucas's desk. Lucas was no longer a cop, but he was still a warrior. The truth unfolded. Lucas sighed, poured himself a glass of wine, and sat down across from Sophia. I knew this would happen, but I didn't think they'd act so quickly. Why are they so afraid of Blaze? Sophia asked. Lucas was silent for a moment, then said slowly, because Blaze saw the traitor. Sophia raised her head immediately. What do you mean? Lucas narrowed his eyes. Ryan Mitchell wasn't killed by criminals. He was killed by a traitor cop. The room fell into an eerie silence. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. Who killed Ryan? Lucas looked straight into her eyes. I don't know for sure, but Blaze does. Sophia turned to look at Blaze. The dog was lying still, but its bright eyes showed that it was listening to everything. Blaze was more than just a witness. It was the missing piece to unmasking the person who betrayed Ryan Mitchell. And that was why they wanted to kill him. Counterattack plan. Sophia knew she couldn't run anymore. They wouldn't stop until Blaze was dead. But this time, she wouldn't let that happen. We need to unmask the traitor, Sophia said firmly. Lucas nodded. Agreed. But to do that, we need solid evidence. But where do we get it? Sophia frowned. Lucas was silent for a moment, then said, Blaze is no ordinary dog. He was trained to memorize the faces and scents of suspects. Sophia's eyes widened. You mean he can identify a traitor if he sees him? Lucas nodded. Exactly. A plan slowly formed in Sophia's mind. We need to find the case files from that year. If Blaze can identify the traitor, we can find a way to expose the truth. But Lucas shook his head. It won't be that easy, Sophia. The original case files have been destroyed. If we want to find them, we have to go to the police station. Sophia felt her tension rise. The police station. That's where they control. Going there to find the files would be like putting yourself in the wolf's mouth. But she looked at Blaze, the dog ready to fight beside her. I'm not afraid. I'll do it. Lucas looked at her, then chuckled. You've changed, Sophia. I like that. Then, let's prepare for this mission. Ready for the raid, Lucas began to formulate a daring plan. Sophia would sneak into the police headquarters, trying to access the confidential data of the Ryan Mitchell case. Blaze would accompany her to identify any faces related to the case. Lucas would act as outside support, ready to intervene if things got out of hand. Sophia knew that this was a dangerous mission. If they discovered her, she would have no way back. But she was no longer the weak girl she once was. Blaze, Sophia bent down, placing her hand on its head. You fought once for Ryan. Now let's finish it together. Blaze looked straight into her eyes. It didn't need to say anything. But Sophia knew that she was ready. The real battle was about to begin. Preparing for a dangerous mission, Sophia never imagined that one day she would break into the police headquarters, but it was something she had to do. She didn't have many options. Ryan Mitchell's case files had been buried by some force, and now the traitor was still out there, controlling everything in the shadows. If they didn't find out the truth, Blaze would never be safe, and neither would she. Lucas helped her plan. He was a cop, so he knew how the headquarters worked. The main entrance is too dangerous. But there's a side entrance for technicians, one that's less monitored. You can use that to break in. Inside, you need to find an internal server where old data is stored. But remember, if they're discovered, they won't treat you as an innocent girl. Sophia nodded, trying to calm down. But there was one thing that made her feel even more uneasy. If the traitor is still working in the police station, she took a deep breath. Then he will know I'm trying to find the truth. Lucas looked at her, his eyes serious. Exactly. Sophia clenched her hands into fists. Then we have to act quickly. Inside that evening, Sophia drove to the police station, stopping in a nearby parking lot. She wore a black coat, a hat that hid her face. Blaze lay silently in the passenger seat, his eyes sharp as if he understood that tonight was an important mission. Are you ready, Blaze? Blaze licked her hand lightly, as if to reassure her that he was always there. Sophia got out of the car, moving carefully along the building until she reached the engineering entrance Lucas had mentioned. She put on gloves, opened the small electrical box in the wall, and used a screwdriver to hack the door opening system. There was a click. The door opened. "Let's go." Sophia quietly slipped inside, Blaze following close behind her. She moved down the dark hallway, taking every step with extreme caution. Everything was fine, but she knew her time was limited. She needed to find the server that stored the records, and she needed to do it quickly. Data deleted after a few minutes of sneaking through the hallways, Sophia reached the server storage room. She pulled the door open gently, slipping inside. The light from the computer screen created dim glow in the darkness. She sat down, turned on the computer, and quickly typed in a keyword, Ryan Mitchell case, but as soon as she pressed enter, no data. Sophia froze. No way. She tried another keyword, Blaze police dog. No data. No way. Someone erased everything. She felt her breathing quicken. The traitor had hidden everything. But at that moment, Blaze's ears perked up, growling softly. Sophia startled, turning her head to look out the small glass window on the door. Outside, someone was coming. The man in the shadows' footsteps echoed in the hallway. Sophia quickly turned off the screen, pulling Blaze back into the dark corner of the room. A figure appeared in front of the glass door. She held her breath. The figure stood still for a few seconds. The feeling of being watched rose in her heart. Then, as if he knew someone was in the room, he opened the door and entered. Sophia tensed, ready to act if necessary. The man approached the desk, looking at the off-screen. He was silent for a long time, then spoke in a low voice. "Someone has come in here." Sophia felt her heart pounding. Then he pulled a gun from his belt. "Come out now." Sophia gripped Blaze's hand, trying to think quickly. If she showed herself, she wouldn't be able to escape. But if she did nothing, Blaze might be killed. She couldn't let that happen. Desperate counterattack, Sophia took a deep breath. Then she whispered into Blaze's ear, "Attack when I give the signal." Blaze growled softly, his body tightening like a spring ready to spring. Sophia picked up an object from the table, a small chair, and threw it hard towards the corner of the room. Bam! The noise caught the gunman's attention. As he turned his head, Blaze shot out like a bolt of lightning. Bam! It snapped at his wrist, causing him to fire his gun wildly into the air. Sophia lunged forward, punching him hard in the head. He backed away, screaming in pain. Blaze didn't let go. It continued to bite him, causing him to fall to the floor. Sophia didn't miss the chance. She picked up the gun, aiming it straight at him. "Don't move." The man gritted his teeth, but he knew he had lost. "You don't understand." He took a deep breath. "There's someone else behind this." Sophia frowned. "What do you mean?" He sneered. "I'm just cleaning up the mess. The real traitor is still lurking in the shadows." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. If he wasn't the mastermind, then who was really pulling the strings? But she didn't have time to think. The alarm sounded. They had to leave immediately. Escape in the night, Sophia quickly tied up her enemy's hands, then rushed out of the building with Blaze before the guards showed up. They crossed the parking lot, climbed into the car, and drove away just before the exit was blocked. Sophia felt her heart pounding madly. She hadn't found the traitor yet, but she knew now that he was still watching everything. "We're not done yet, Blaze." Blaze licked her hand lightly as a message. "I'll go with you to the end." The fight wasn't over yet. Escape, Sophia drove through the empty streets in the dark, her breathing still ragged after escaping the police station. Blaze sat beside her, his sharp eyes fixed on the window, as if he were still watching for anyone following them. Sophia had failed to find the Ryan Mitchell case file, but she had discovered something more important. The traitor was still lurking in the system, and he was following them. Which meant one thing was clear: he would not let her and Blaze live. She needed to find out who he was before he found her first. Lucas revisited the final clue. She drove to Lucas' Grant house, parking in a secluded area before entering. Lucas stood at the door, his eyes serious when he saw her and Blaze. "You've been found out, haven't you?" Sophia nodded, sighing. Ryan Mitchell's file was wiped clean, but I met someone who was cleaning up the mess. Lucas crossed his arms. "What did he say?" "He said he was just a cleaner. There's someone else behind this." Lucas frowned, as if thinking fast. "That means the traitor is still in the business." Sophia clenched her fists. We have to find him. Blaze is the only living witness, and I know he'll recognize his face if he sees him. Lucas thought for a moment. Then he said slowly, there's a way to do it. The mysterious hard drive. Lucas walked over to an old safe in the corner of the room. He entered the code, opened it, and pulled out a small, dusty hard drive. This is the last thing Ryan Mitchell left me before he died. Sophia's eyes widened. What did he leave in there? Lucas wasn't sure, but he knew that Ryan had suspected a traitor before. Ryan was gathering information on the Black Viper gang and those involved within the police. If there was a list, it would be in here. Sophia felt her heart pounding. Can we check it now? Lucas nodded, quickly plugging the hard drive into the computer. The screen flickered for a few seconds. Then a series of files opened. A list of names of people involved in Ryan Mitchell's case. But as soon as they saw the first name, both of them froze. The traitor's name on the screen, the words appeared clearly. Inside suspect, Chief Samuel Whitaker. Sophia was stunned. No way. He's the head of the entire force. Lucas clenched his fists. So, he's been manipulating everything all this time. Samuel Whitaker wasn't just a powerful chief. He had control of all the files in the police department, and he could easily erase all traces of the old case. Now I understand, Lucas muttered. He killed Ryan Mitchell to protect the Black Viper gang. And when Blaze escaped, he went after him to cover up the clues. Sophia clenched her fists. Then we have to expose him. But Lucas didn't agree right away. You think this is that easy? Whitaker not only has power, he also has loyal followers. If we come forward without clear evidence, he will kill us before we can say anything. Sophia felt desperate. So what do we do? Lucas looked at her, his eyes sharp. We need to make him reveal himself. Luring the traitor out, they needed a plan. They couldn't just incriminate Whitaker. They needed irrefutable evidence. Lucas thought for a moment, then said, we'll make him believe that Blaze still has an important secret. Sophia frowned. What do you mean? Lucas' lips curled. He thinks Blaze is just a dog. But he doesn't know that it can recognize him. They decided to lure Whitaker into a trap. By sending an anonymous message, they would convince him that there was video evidence of him in the murder of Ryan Mitchell, and that Blaze had seen it all. If you want the video back, meet me in the abandoned parking lot on the west side tomorrow night. They knew Whitaker wouldn't let this go. He would come himself to eliminate the person who threatened him. And when he showed up, they would record everything and expose him to the entire police force. The game was set that night. Sophia looked at Blaze, stroking his fur. Tomorrow, we'll end it all. Blaze licked her hand, his eyes glowing in the dark. He knew his mission. Tomorrow, the nightmare would end. Or, this was just the beginning of a bigger storm. The trap is set. Sophia stood in the shadows of the abandoned parking lot, clutching the recording device Lucas had prepared. Blaze lay crouched beside her, his breathing slow, but his eyes still shining in the dark. Lucas was hiding in another spot, his gun clutched, ready to intervene if things got out of hand. Remember, Sophia? Lucas's voice rang out through the earpiece. We need Whitaker to confess, or at least say something that can be used as evidence. Sophia nodded, but she couldn't hide her anxiety. They were dealing with a very dangerous man. Samuel Whitaker was not only the sheriff, but also a cunning old man, someone who had survived in the shadows for too long. He wouldn't fall for it. The traitor appears. A noise sounded in the distance. Then the headlights of an SUV tore through the night. The car stopped in the middle of the parking lot. The door opened. From the shadows, Samuel Whitaker stepped out. He was not wearing a police uniform, but a black suit, looking like a secret agent. Two burly men followed him, bodyguards or accomplices. Whitaker stepped forward, his eyes glaring around him, then stopped when he saw Sophia. He gave a crooked smile. Who are you? Sophia kept her face calm. We all know why you're here, Whitaker. He narrowed his eyes. So you're the one who sent me the message? I have to admit, you've got guts. You killed Ryan Mitchell, Sophia said, not beating around the bush. And you tried to kill Blaze to cover it up. Whitaker didn't react immediately. Then he laughed. Ryan Mitchell. A name long forgotten. You think you can dig up the past? Not me, Sophia said, looking down at Blaze. It was him. Whitaker looked down at Blaze. The dog was looking straight at him, his eyes fearless. Blaze remembered very well who had killed his master. And he never forgot. The game gets dangerous. Whitaker was silent for a few seconds. Then he nodded slightly. You're smart, Sophia. But you made a terrible mistake. Sophia tensed. And what was that mistake? Whitaker smiled a deadly smile. You think you're setting me up. But in reality, I already knew. Sophia suddenly realized something was wrong. She turned around, but it was too late. From behind, two other cars silently entered the parking lot, blocking the exit. Lucas immediately sounded the alarm through his headset. Sophia, we're being ambushed. A group of gunmen got out of the car, all wearing masks and holding rifles. They weren't cops, they were professional killers. Whitaker had known their plan all along. And now, he was the one setting the trap. Blaze strikes back as the gunmen raised their guns. Blaze growled fiercely. His body tensed, ready to strike at any moment. Whitaker put his hands in his pockets, as if he wasn't worried at all. Good dog. He laughed. But how many people can he take down? Sophia clenched her fists. She couldn't let it end here. Lucas, do you have a backup plan? Lucas didn't answer immediately. Then he said, I have an idea, but you have to buy some time. Sophia clenched her fists. Okay. She turned to Whitaker, trying to keep her composure. You know, Whitaker, I thought you'd be smarter than this. He raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? You came here yourself to confront me. But don't you think I've prepared something? Whitaker paused. She smiled faintly. Don't you wonder why I dare confront you, knowing who you are? Whitaker's eyes flashed with suspicion. At the same time, a siren sounded in the distance. Bang, bang, bang. Sophia smiled dangerously. I didn't come here alone. The turret of the table in the distance, red and blue lights were flashing, and a convoy of police cars was approaching. Lucas had secretly informed some honest officers in the department, who had also long suspected Whitaker. He had put himself in a difficult position. Whitaker gritted his teeth, his eyes darkening. Damn it! One of the henchmen looked at him, panicked. What now, boss? Whitaker took a deep breath. Then he raised his hands. Retreat. The gunman quickly climbed into the car, but the police had blocked all the exits. A large-scale arrest took place right in the parking lot. Whitaker was restrained, but he showed no fear. As he was handcuffed, he turned to Sophia, smiling dangerously. You may have won this battle, but the war is not over. Sophia was not afraid. She looked at him, then bent down to stroke Blaze's head. We won. And this time, you will not be able to hide the truth. Freedom at last. Whitaker was arrested. The evidence on the hard drive was released, exposing the whole truth about Ryan Mitchell's death and Whitaker's criminal network within the police force. Blaze was finally free. He was no longer a hunted dog. He had demanded justice for his former owner. And most of all, it has found a new owner who will never leave it.